Hi, Barbara. It's Dee and Kate. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. I know I read that you're in Southern California, so hopefully it's not as hot in your area in San Diego as it is in Los Angeles right now.
No, it's probably a little bit cooler, but when I opened my curtains this morning, the outside thermometer said 102.
Oof, yeah, I think it's
So
about
I
a
don't
hundred.
know. I
It's about
haven't been out
104.
actually.
Well, it's
Uh,
autumn here. It's cold here,
Yeah, Kate's
officially.
in England, so
and you're in Northern England?
Yeah, I'm in the very north, and it's officially it was dark. It's been raining. It's autumn. The leaves are falling.
yeah, it's 104 in Los Angeles today. So I'm staying indoors too.
Yeah.
So Barbara, I've read that you're a licensed psychotherapist who specializes in hypnotic regression therapy. Can you explain how this type of therapy works?
Well, first of all, I think we're very, very fortunate to have this particular means of working with people. So people will come with an issue, or sometimes more than one issue, but something that they want to find out more about. And so um, we will discuss that for a while. And then we'll do the regression, which means that the person lies down in a very comfortable position on a bed or on my sofa if they're here for a session in person. I also do them online on Zoom and Skype and FaceTime because a lot of people want sessions and they're really very, very far away from where I am in San Diego. So the person will lie down and I'll state what we're looking for. And then, in other words, the subject of the regression. Then I give about 15 minutes or so of nice, relaxing suggestions. And the person is relaxing and going deeper and deeper into relaxation and closer and closer to the subconscious part of the person's mind. Now, it's important to know that the subconscious part of the mind of any of us records everything that we experience in any way. And it even records those things that may have happened to us that we were not consciously aware of.
Like, are you saying like in a different life, like a previous life?
Well, it could be. Sometimes the regressions will take us into past lives, depending on what the person's issue is that they want to work with. So I was trained for 5 years as a past life regression therapist. And this was back in the mid to late 1980s. And then in 1991, people started coming to me for regressions for extraterrestrial encounters that they were having. And I'm still doing both types of regressions. Most of them are for people's paranormal experiences and experiences with other beings, whom we refer to as extraterrestrial or other dimensional. And sometimes other people will come for past life regression. So I continue to do all of that very happily. Okay, so a person is lying down there going through all the relaxation suggestions
Mhm.
for several minutes. And when I can see, I can tell by their breathing that they're nice and relaxed. I count down from 10 down to number one, saying that when we get to number one, they will be back in time at the incident that they might have been wondering about that had already happened.
So,
And then to find out all the details, to have a sense in the regression of reliving that earlier experience. Like, for instance, many people who are adults in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s will come and they've been thinking all of these decades about something peculiar that used to happen to them when they were children. like waking up in the night, for instance, and seeing unusual beings in the room, or remembering sort of being taken out through the closed window or the solid wall and into the air and then into some sort of a flying craft. And they might remember a few moments of that, or they might remember that those visitors, shall we say, have come many times during their, not only their childhood, but their teenage years and their adult years too. And they might be wondering, or they might more currently find an unusual marking on their body, and they just don't know where that came from. They're very curious about that. Or they may have a period of missing time for an hour or hour and a half or 2 hours and wonder, well, what happened? You know, it's like a blank. I was conscious, awake, going about my day, even in many cases being with other people. And then suddenly the next thing they knew, it's a couple of hours later, and the people they were with have gone. And maybe it was afternoon when this began, and now it's dark, so they knew that some time had passed. So anyway, there are lots of reasons why people wonder what's going on for them, and what are these experiences that happen? So we'll choose one of those in a regression.
So are they trying to understand like repressed memories, like trying to or relive like a period of trauma? Is that like how many of these experiences were traumatic for them?
Well, some of them, I wouldn't say all by any means, but some of them are. And the great thing about it is that usually if somebody has been traumatized by an experience of this sort, once they eventually get around to doing the regression and have a sense of reliving it and being returned home and going on with their lives, and now they know the details, they know what the beings look like, and they have a real sense of what was done when they were with the beings on a craft. And so once it comes into their conscious awareness, they can process it. And I have found again and again that a person who was previously very traumatized about this, once it's kind of up into the light of their consciousness, and they can talk about it, they can emote about it if they need to, that they have a way of working through it, and it's no longer really traumatic. So a person doesn't have to be stuck with the trauma.
Have you personally had an encounter with an ET?
I was about to ask that.
Yeah. Yes, I have. Now, I'm not the typical experiencer, as we call them, in that I did not have them in infancy or childhood or growing up. I didn't have an experience until I was well into my adult life in 1994. And the reason why I had that experience is that I had been told by a real extraterrestrial being who came talking, channeling through one of my clients who came for many years. And he told me that if I wanted to, I could be taken for the making of a crop circle, because he knew I was going to England every summer to experience and research the crop circles. And he also knew that I was working with a lot of people who had extraterrestrial encounters. So he told me that I could be taken for the making of a crop circle. And he told me how to communicate with the beings without even knowing who the beings were or where they were, but they were certainly not here on Earth. And so I did that. And then lo and behold, one night over there in England that summer, 1994, I was taken from the bedroom of the little inn that I was staying in. And then the next morning, I was with a group of people. It was a conference group. And we all got on a double-decker bus and rode for about 45 minutes. I was sitting up as high as I could on the top floor of the double-decker bus so I could look out over the fields. I was always on the lookout for a new crop circle and saw one in a field that we went by. And make a long story short, 3 friends and I went back into that crop circle. Well, it turned out after I got home again from England and had a colleague regress me to that experience, that crop circle, which I was the first one to discover, and we were the first people to go into it, that was the one that I had been taken for the making of several hours earlier in the middle of the previous night. So that was very exciting. Anyway, having had that contact with those particular beings, then I'm surmising that the news sort of went out amongst extraterrestrial beings. We know some of them, many of the different species belong to the Galactic Federation.
Is that like Star Trek?
Which is sort of in a way like our United Nations with, members from various countries all over the world. And yet not all countries are members. That's the same with the Galactic Federation, that many planetary civilizations belong to it, and then some don't. They're considered renegade, and they don't deserve to be part of that council. So anyway, I have been thinking that once I had that one experience with that group of few beings who were making that particular crop circle, that somehow other beings knew about me, that kind of brought their attention to this particular human being. And then about 3 years later, I had another experience, and about 10 years after that, 11 years after that, I had another one, and I had one happen in the middle of the day, a very bright sunny day in Southern California. And suddenly there was a being standing in the middle of my living room. I was absolutely surprised because I knew I was home alone and that I kept the doors locked when I'm home alone. And but anyway, here was this being. I walked into the living room, and there he was, just standing there, smiling, looking wonderful. And he was a reptilian being.
Oh.
And usually I would be really freaked out by
reptilian.
a reptile taller than I am standing there in my living room. And I'd heard some less than favorable things about reptilians from some of my clients. Some of the reptilians were favorable, but to us humans, but definitely not all of them. But this guy just looked so friendly and wonderful. And I went right over to him without hesitation. And he had his hand out for a handshake. And I held that hand. And he talked to me telepathically for, I would guess, 5 or 6 minutes. And the point of that visit was not to take me away or, poke and probe or investigate my body or anything. It was simply to give me an experience with one of the beings when I was conscious, awake, alert, and in the light of day, so that I would be, in my own mind, totally reassured and validated that all of the work I had been doing with other experiencers in regressing them to their experiences, that all of this was really true.
Yeah, aware of their existence.
There really are, whether we humans believe it or not, there really are plenty of extraterrestrial beings that do come and visit particular people. They don't visit everybody on Earth, but they do visit millions
of
all
people.
over the
So,
earth.
which species have
So,
you encountered? So, reptilians. Have you encountered grays or Nordics?
And the blues.
well, in the first experience taken for the making of a crop circle, those beings would be more like the gray type of beings. And yet I never did see the three beings who actually took me, because they were always behind me. Even when I was on the UFO, they stood behind me. I never really got a good look at them. But the two piloting this ship, it was a fairly small ship, only maybe about 20 or 25 feet in diameter, I would estimate, for the making of a crop circle. And the two beings sitting ahead of me appeared to me to be shorter, thin beings, kind of that grayish, tannish skin, and it would be more like the typical gray types. So there's so many different species that I think that they were maybe in the very huge category of gray beings, but not like the little grays that we tend to hear about a lot. Yeah. So then in the next experience, my car and I were taken. I was driving my car on a California freeway, the 101 freeway.
Oh, yeah.
From Santa Barbara coming back toward Claremont, California, where I lived. And it was midnight. And anyway, a small craft landed on the edge of the freeway, although as I drove by it, to me, it looked like a great big silver trailer truck.
Oh, okay.
And it didn't occur to me that it could be a UFO, which it turned out that it was. But, you know, the beings and their craft have a way of disguising themselves, looking like
camouflage,
something else. This is very, very typical. Many people have experienced this. So this looked like a big commercial trailer truck. Turned out that it wasn't. But anyway, just past that truck, as I was driving along, suddenly there was a flash of light across my windshield, and it looked like a cord or something stretched diagonally across the window. And all of this in 1 second. This huge light right there by the windshield, this cord or whatever it was, and a crack. My windshield was actually cracked right in front of where I was at the driver's wheel. And then it turned out later, I found in regression, that that's when my car and I were taken up in a beam of light into a small craft. And in that experience, there were lots of little beings. I don't know what the name of that group would be, but they were kind of a bluish, silvery color, and with big heads. They're very short, probably only about 3 or 3.5 feet tall, and very thin, but big heads, big eyes, very big, beautiful sort of almond-shaped eyes that tilted up a bit at the outer edge. And those eyes seem to be like a deep blue, a cobalt blue. Anyway, these little beings, there were probably about 20 or 30 of them, that suddenly rushed toward the car once we were on the craft. And I thought they were absolutely adorable and funny. They were so curious. They were climbing all over the car and looking in all the windows, and they opened the passenger door, even though I know I had locked it, and sat on the passenger seat, and 2 more opened the driver's door, even though I know I had locked it, and ushered me out and into another room where the little beings gathered around. And then there was a tall white being who said, "You probably wonder why you're here." And by the way, they had brought sort of a metal looking helmet type of thing down from high up on a pole and had placed it snugly around my head, like a helmet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was feeling this electrical current coming through the helmet and running through my whole body, but especially in my head. So then there was a very tall white being standing up past the small ones. And he said, "You probably wonder why you're here and what's going on," referring to this electrical current
I would be
feeling.
wondering that.
And then he said, "Don't worry, we're not harming you in any way. We're simply taking information from your brain. And that is, we're taking only the information that you know from all the work that you have been doing with people who visit, who get visited by those of us from space. And some of us are very, very interested in what these people have found out about those visits." So the woman who was regressing me to those details was an excellent woman named Dolores Cannon. Many people who are interested in this whole field know of the many books that Dolores Cannon has written and the hypnotic regression work that she did. And she was regressing me to that experience because I knew some pretty peculiar things that happened, including the crack in the windshield, which remained. I mean, it really was cracked. And I had to have the windshield
I was
replaced.
about to say the aliens should have fixed that
So
one.
anyway, she was asking questions, as she always did. Dolores, she was a great investigator, as well as a wonderful regression person. And so as she asked questions during the whole session, which went on for about 2 hours, she asked one question after the other, and the being would answer the questions.
Oh.
So all of that material that came through that regression, she added into her book, which she was just finishing at the time, her book called The Custodians. Anyway, the being gave so much information about him and their way of life, for his group, and then about other beings and about the whole phenomenon. And he said, if you would like more information.
Oh no. I think Barbara paused.
She has paused. She's paused for me.
Barbara, are you there?
Hope she's not been taken.
I don't know. She might have been abducted. That's terrible. Barbara, are you
Hello,
back?
Barbara. Hello.
Okay.
Did you
Okay.
lose connection? Did you lose us?
Yes, I wasn't touching anything, but it suddenly
Okay, it might have
came
been. We were worried you
Anyway,
might have been abducted, so I'm glad that you're still here. Everything's cool.
Yeah, I really want to ask you. So you were mentioning that there's like renegades that aren't
Yeah.
part of the Galactic Federation. So do they come and visit us? Are they maybe ones that do bad things? Or are they out for something else?
Like a nefarious race.
Well, I think some of them would be out doing something else without bothering to do anything with Earth or people from Earth. But some of them do come here, like some of the little gray aliens that seem to be sort of heartless. In other words, they're very scientific and they're wanting to know a lot about the physical bodies of us humans and our emotions. They like to study us.
And they're the probers.
It seems sort of robotic, sort of cold-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
That's how people experience them. So we're talking about the typical little gray beings. So those beings are considered renegade and are not part of the Galactic Federation. And then also some of the reptilian beings are considered more renegade and are not part of that federation. They're more aggressive. They're very interested in power. They're more arrogant. And so these types that I'm mentioning right now are just the opposite of many of the extraterrestrial beings, whom we're finding out more and more that more and more of them are very high consciousness, spiritually aware, benevolent, loving beings. There are many of that type of beings in the cosmos. And so the Galactic Federation is made up of those beings whom we would certainly consider to be much more positive and more helpful to each other and helpful to us.
Is Earth a part of the Galactic Federation? Like, do we have any members from, like, the U.S. government, for example?
No.
No. Are we considered renegades?
I've heard from a number of these different kinds of beings in the regressions. I've heard that some of them would very much like Earth to be able to be part of it, but we're not evolved enough. We're too involved with aggressivity and wars and murders and satanic cults and pedophilia and greed and avarice and grabs for control, really fierce competition. So they see us as a very unevolved species, we humans.
I don't blame them.
I can understand that.
Yeah, in many ways, I think that's true. I think we're very unevolved. And yet, on the other hand, there are many humans, as we all know, who are wonderfully evolved. And they've been for centuries creating incredible art and architecture and music and dance and poetry and writing and, all of the arts. To beautify life. And yet we do have these negative aspects too, which are very dominant in the entire world culture. So anyway, a number of these beings of different species of extraterrestrials have expressed that we've got a lot of evolving to do as a human species before we could even begin to qualify for that great federation.
Well, I fully agree. I mean, if we can't get along with each other, how are we going to be able to get along with other species and, technologically advance our culture? But a question about that, though. So if they, feel that we're unevolved, why do they come and make hybrid children with us? Because so you're telling me a lot of the people that you regress sometimes are alien hybrids themselves or have had experiences with hybrid children.
Yes, well, both of them. First of all, some of these species have really concentrated on a reproduction program of creating hybrids with humans and with them, their material. And those hybrids mostly are living on the ships with them because they're not human enough in proportion, to really survive here or to be accepted here. Well, they would look too different,
Okay,
However,
so they don't look like
one
humans.
type of hybrids. Many people I know and many whom I've regressed have found out that they do have hybrid children that are living on the ship. And sometimes they get to visit those hybrid children when they're taken on the ships. And that most of the time they don't get to see them because those children cannot survive here. Okay, that's one whole group of hybrids. There's another group too, in which the hybrids can live here. And that's because they are mostly human. And either before conception, they're made as a little embryo. I mentioned earlier with the mother's eggs and the father's sperm mixed in with extraterrestrial DNA. And then that's implanted in the mother's womb back here on Earth. And that's one way of creating one of these hybrids who lives here. And the other way, I think I mentioned, is that the mother well into the pregnancy, maybe month 7, 8, or almost 9, is taken on the ship and injected with extraterrestrial DNA. And then that fetus is hybridized. So they're all born here and raised here, like we all are. But they have some different characteristics, even though in every case that I know of hybrids, they look like very, very human people. But they all, from a very, very earliest age, have felt convinced that somehow their real parents, their real family is out there in space rather than in their own home. And they've all, from a very early age, realized that they do things a little differently, like they see auras around people, the energy field around people. And gradually, during childhood, they realize that not everybody sees that. In fact, hardly anybody they meet sees auras on a regular basis.
So are any of these women or mothers of the hybrid children, are they having any like sexual contact with the aliens? Because I read about these two women who have actually had physical intercourse with some of these extraterrestrial beings. Is that possible?
Yes, it is possible. And a number of the people who have come to me, both women and
men too,
have had those experiences when they're taken on the craft. Now, the offspring from those unions, those hybrids, they stay on the ship. They're not among the ones who can actually live here.
Oh, because they don't look human.
In other words, they would be, those hybrids, children from those unions, would be half extraterrestrial and half human. And that's not human enough to live here. And the beings who arrange all this, who are involved with this, they want those hybrids to live there. You see, I think part of this whole thing is that there are definitely a number of races out there who are very, very interested in planet Earth and in human beings. And they see us as really quite unique as human beings because we have such a range of emotion and so much strength of emotion. And most of those species, whom we call extraterrestrials, just do not have that component of emotion like we do, or certainly not nearly as strong.
They're like Spock from Star Trek.
Yeah, like Dr. Spock. Yeah. I mean, he was, I think, a very good example of that. And very smart, incredibly smart, and knowing so much, very, very capable, very responsible, and didn't have much emotion, or didn't have any, I think. So from those beings, many of them are extremely interested in us and all the arts and creativity that we have here and the variety. And they also look at planet Earth, I've been told, by an extraterrestrial. They look at planet Earth as a really unique planet because we have more species on planet Earth, species and subspecies and subspecies of everything, all kinds of life here. And we have so much life, so many different forms, that on this one planet, we have more different species than all of the planets in all of creation added up together. Wow. In other words, there are a lot of planets that have life, even growing life, plant life and so forth, and being life. But if you add them all up together, they don't even come near to the number of species that we have here on Earth. So they consider this a very unique place. A lot of them are very interested in us and very curious about us. So I can see why, being as advanced as they are in travel and in intelligence, that a lot of them would come here and want to learn a lot about us.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. I mean, from a scientific perspective, Earth is a place you'd
Yeah,
want to study. So let's talk about crop circles for a bit.
Yes.
I know you've studied crop circles for almost 30 years. What do
yeah.
do you think the cause of this mysterious phenomenon, like extraterrestrial spaceships, like ships are creating these crop circles?
Well, yeah, I must say, first of all, I don't think anybody in the world absolutely knows for sure, but I feel convinced that they are coming from some other very intelligent source. And it's also a source that knows a lot about us and our mentality and many of our fields of study. So there have been witnesses that have seen, they didn't know this was going to happen, but they
Hmm.
happened to be outside and see that there would be a beam of light coming down from the sky. And it seemed to be coming right down into a field of growing crop. And in some cases, it's been daylight enough, like late afternoon, um, for the witness, to see that the beam of light seemed to be coming from what looked like a roundish, maybe disc-shaped metallic craft. Now, some other crop circles, while they were being made and witnessed in the making, it didn't show anything like that. In some cases, it seemed to be like a pathway of wind that would be blowing off over the top of the crop field. And then at a certain point, it would stop, that no object seen, but just this wind riffling over the top of the crop, and then stopping. And then the witness could see that the crop was lowering down in that area. And then after it was all over, which only took several seconds, by the way, the person would walk out into the field where they had seen this and notice, oh my goodness, here's a new crop circle. So that's been witnessed. Also, there have been a few witnessings of what we would call orbs or balls of light flying around over the surface of the crop and making the crop circle. In one case, it seemed like the orb of light was maybe at the level of the top of the crop and then lowering down as it was lowering down the blades of the crop into a circle. And then there were orbs coming from behind a hedge at the end of that field. This was 1996 in Wiltshire County, England. And these two orbs came over that part of the field where the first one was laying down a circle. And then it created a beautiful six-pointed pattern, like the spokes of a bicycle almost, coming out perfectly spaced, perfectly sized with each other, like a spoke with a circle at the end. And then two other balls of light, or maybe the same ones having returned, we don't know, swooped over the field, over the crop, and then these six spokes radiated out even further with another circle added along the spokes. Anyway, it turned out to be a beautiful, perfect six-spoked pattern of circles and these spokes. And that whole pattern took 7 seconds
Oh, they're
to lay
fast.
down.
Yeah, they're
That's, I mean,
fast.
it's just amazing. Absolutely. So those are some of the things that have been witnessed. But in any event, we wonder who's responsible for this.
Do you think it could possibly be a hoax? Like it could be humans? Like Kate
Yeah.
actually brought this up yesterday when I was
Oh,
chatting with
yes.
her.
Yeah. I was going to ask how you feel about Doug and Dave because they came out and said that they invented crop circles, didn't they?
Yes, they said that, and they said they made all the crop
The crop
circle.
circles. Have you ever met them?
No, but I
No.
have I have met other young men who, after Doug and Dave, and still go out into the fields. I've had long, long conversations with some of them, and they it's very interesting about them. I think there's a lot of ego involved there that, oh, yeah, well, we can make these crop circles. And some of them, I think, began back in the early 1990s to try to disprove that there was something paranormal or maybe coming from space, about these crop circles. So they wanted to prove that they were all man-made, as Doug and Dave had said in 1991 and 1990. And so there was some sort of chutzpah, some sort of ego stuff going on there.
Sounds like it.
And yet, as the years have gone on, some of these young men have told me that there were some paranormal things going on affecting them and influencing them to go out and make a crop circle. Like one of them will be sleeping at night and wake up with a voice in his head saying, "Get up right now, go to such and such a field." They'd mention the location and make a corn circle. In England, they call them corn circles. We call them crop circles. But so he would call his buddies and they would get together, their little team of hoaxers, and go out and make it. So there's that. And then sometimes paranormal things happen to them when they're actually in a field in the middle of the night making a crop circle. Like in one case, there was a real glowing, effervescent ball of light, white light, that was in the field heading right toward one of the hoaxers as he was laying down the crop.
Oh, wow.
With a big instrument. And he, didn't know what it would do if it actually came and hit him. So he ran out of the field. And the other ones were kind of spooked too, watching this. Nobody was actually harmed, as it turned out, but they didn't know what they were dealing with, of course. And sometimes they get messages, even like in the evening, they'll get a picture. They experience it as being downloaded into their head, a picture of a new crop circle pattern. And that person who receives the download will immediately draw it on paper. And if he's one of these hoaxers, he'll call his buddies and share the picture, and then they will go out. They feel that they've been instructed from somewhere, somehow, someone, to make this particular pattern as a crop circle. So in a way, I think that knowing all that, we have to consider that the hoaxers maybe are part of the messages, or the deliverer of the messages in the crop circles, because a lot of the crop circles certainly have symbols that seem to be meaningful. We can recognize some of them from our earthly point of view, and a lot of them we don't really recognize. We don't know what they mean, but they seem to have meaning, as if we are being given messages.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about crop circles. Like, is it just for aesthetics, or is it like possibly extraterrestrial beings are kind of tagging, that we've been here, kind of like, a lot of ne'er-do-well teens tag a wall with spray paint.
Yeah, like graffiti.
The graffiti. They're like, this
Like
is
graffiti.
our tag, and they're putting their tag on, in England.
It could be all of the above. And of course, we don't absolutely know. We can kind of guess at the motivations, but it does seem like whoever or whatever this intelligence is, whether it's specific extraterrestrials in specific ships or some other maybe wider intelligence coming. Anyway, does have intelligence. That is absolutely for sure. You can just tell by the patterns. But I think they're trying to educate us. I think they're trying to wake us up
Alert
to
us,
realize
yeah.
there's a lot more than what most of us humans have considered as part of reality. And there are many beings out there who would really like to see human beings go through the ascension process, which more and more people are talking about these days. And that is evolving in consciousness so that we don't have to live with the wars and the murders and the crimes and the greed and the drug addictions and, some of the really unfortunate things that
Definitely.
we've got going on here, and that we can live in a more harmonious way with each other and a higher sense of spirituality.
Yeah, I agree. I think we do need to be enlightened as a species. In fact, I think we should just so we can get into the Galactic Federation. I feel like we're missing out on the party here. You know,
Yeah, yes, we
yeah,
are. We
yeah.
are.
There's a lot going on that we don't even know about. So, Barbara, I know we've gone on a little bit long, but I want to talk to you about how can our listeners book a hypnotic regression session with you? Can they do that through your website?
Yes, that's the best way, really, for somebody who doesn't already know me. The website is barbaralamregressions.com. And on that website, there's quite a number of different things, including the books. I've written 4 books now, and I'm thinking about doing a 5th, but I just don't have time yet for that. But anyway, there are 4 books can be ordered really easily from the website. I get the information and I send them out, and I sign them and write a little message to them, which some people really like. Also, that's a good way to book a regression, that you type a message like you would type an email, and it comes to my email and I answer it. On email, we begin there, and then we give information about the sessions and the cost, and that we can do them in person in San Diego, or we can do them online on Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. I've done very, very successfully on those different media. So no matter where a person is, even in another country, they can have a regression with me if they would wish to.
Oh,
So
that's
that's good.
great.
Thank goodness for technology.
Yeah.
Do you have a screening process, or will you regress anyone?
Well, I kind of have a sense of getting to know them a little bit before we actually set the session. And usually they'll tell me what their concerns are that they would like to find answers for in the regression. And I have not had anybody come whom I wouldn't want to work with. I mean, people who've come, and there have been thousands of them, literally thousands, that they all seem to be very decent human beings, decent people. And I've never had one person come who was not a very decent person, sincerely interested in what they were coming to find out about.
All right, so
It's
people,
people.
you can go to barbaralamregressions.com, and I'll post a link to the website. And yeah, you could book your own hypnotic regression session, and also go buy a copy of one of Barbara's books, signed copy, if you'd like. Barbara, thanks for being on the show. It's been a pleasure
Thank
chatting
you.
with you. And
Oh, you're welcome.
yeah, next time you do a crop circle expedition in the UK, maybe Kate Rambo can join you because she's
I'd
already
love
there.
to come.
Yeah,
Yes,
that'd
that would be
wonderful.
wonderful. Well, I did leave tours, crop circle tours, for many years. But they were all Americans who came on the tours, with one exception. There were a couple of, 1 or 2 English people who came on them, but mostly Americans who were interested in the crop circles, and they just didn't know where to go or how to find one or where to stay or where to eat or anything. And that country in southern England is so lovely.
Oh, yeah.
County, rolling
lovely.
hills and beautiful fields, and it's absolutely heavenly. I always considered it heaven on earth.
Wiltshire is very nice. I will
Yeah.
say that.
Well, Barbara,
Yeah.
thanks again for being on the show. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you. Great pleasure for me as well.